What's happening, YouTube, and what's happening, Michael B? Back in the day gamer here, coming at you with this week's video response to Michael B the Game Genie's Top 3 Tuesday. The theme for this week is comic book games. Now, I myself do not collect comic books, but obviously everyone knows Batman, Spider-Man, Captain America, the Hulk, all those comic book figures. So there's a lot of games that they're in that are no-brainers, but there's also a lot of obscure comic book characters that have their own games that, who knows, maybe they'll pop up here in this list. But getting along with today's list, my number 3 pick is The Tick on the Sega Genesis. Now, if you aren't familiar with The Tick, I find that hard to believe if you're into retro video games. But if you're not familiar with him, he started out as a comic book, and he actually was ranked in a top 100 comic book superheroes of all time. He was ranked number 57. I found that very surprising. But if you don't know him from the comic book, you know him from his animated series on TV, which is thoroughly amusing. It's a great show to watch. I'm sure you've all seen it. If you haven't, make sure to check it out. He also had a not so well received TV series that was not animated. It was on Fox, and it didn't run for very long, just a season or two. I myself liked it. I thought it was funny, but being a fan of The Tick, maybe that's why. Moving on to the game itself. Now, actually, at first, I didn't like it that much. I'm not sure why. When I first bought it, I was super excited because I loved The Tick, but it kind of let me down. I didn't play it again for a while, and then I popped it back in and had a lot more fun with it. It really grew on me. The one thing that disappoints me about this game is in between levels, when Tick yells spoon, it's not very loud. That's his catchphrase. It's what he does. Everybody knows that. Spoon! The first stage in this game is great. You literally throw people under the bus, but you could fall under the bus yourself, so be careful. The music is just like on the cartoon. It's catchy. I like it. The graphics are good. Standard for Sega Genesis. There's tons of characters, both good and bad, which add more to the game itself. But the comedy element is what makes this game stand out for me. The Tick, he's a big meathead. He's always breaking things because he doesn't know how strong he is. Well, right here in this part, obviously he punches and kicks, but he's also so tough, sometimes he can just flick the enemies to death. Another thing I thought very amusing is in this part where he jumps from building to building. In between, him being a big meathead, all muscle bound, in his jump he's very graceful. He's doing ballerina moves and flicking his feet. I think that's super funny. It's probably my favorite part of the game. I spent a lot of time just jumping back and forth in between buildings and laughing about that. But in this part, the knockback is horrible. There's so many things coming at you in some parts. Spears, knives, axes, hits you, knocks you back. Most of the time, you fall in between the buildings. Some of the time, you make it to the ledge. But when you do fall in between the buildings, a great aspect of this is that you don't die. You fall into another sub-level where you fight a mini-boss. And that's great because there's so many, like I said, good and bad characters in this game. They're not all just end bosses. You got a lot of mini-bosses. So that's a lot of fun. I give The Tick a thumbs up for sure. My number 2 game on this list today is something you'll be more familiar with. Batman and Robin on the Sega Genesis. Now everybody knows this game. I tried to shy away from games I thought lots of people would pick or that you would know, but this is just a great game. The intro is awesome. It tells a story without words, which is what an intro should do. That doesn't happen very often on video games. You can also pick between Batman or Robin. Okay, of course, you want to be Batman, because it's Batman. Everybody likes Batman. But you can choose Robin. But screw that, I'm going to be Batman. So you hit start. This part right here, where they show the Batmobile and the Joker with the birthday cake. I don't know why, but that is probably my all-time favorite Sega Genesis graphics right there. Now, this whole game really reminds me of the cartoon, which I really loved. It was a great show. I mean, it was dark, and the music in it kind of draws you in. It was more like a show than a cartoon. I watched it all the time. I remember it used to be on at 5 o'clock. And obviously we were usually either cooking dinner or eating dinner at that time. And I can remember many, many days where I was like, no, we have to leave the TV on. I want to watch Batman. That just shows you how much I love that cartoon. That didn't really come into play with my choosing of this game. It's just a good game. The soundtrack is awesome as well. But the drawback is that this game is just too damn hard. There's some parts where it's just undoable. I mean, for example, the first level, when I was filming the video footage for this, I played, no exaggeration, 3 to 4 hours before I finally beat Harvey at the end of the first board. You know, the board itself isn't that hard, but just the end guy, well, girl actually, was just so hard. It honestly took me 3 to 4 hours. I wasn't going to give up. I wanted to show me beating her for this video. There it is. You got it. I did it. There's the proof. But for 3 to 4 hours, wasn't quite worth the payoff. Now, the Super Nintendo version of this game, I believe to be the better of the two. They're not the same game, they're different games, but I like the Super Nintendo version better. Had I owned the Super Nintendo version, which I don't, that's why it's not featured here, it probably would have taken the number 1 spot. Since I don't own it, we're going with the Sega Genesis version of Batman and Robin, and it takes the number 2 spot. The reason I don't have it is because you hardly ever see it out in the wild, and when I can remember twice that I've actually seen it, you know, and they wanted $100, which I would actually pay because I want it, but both times the label was not in good condition, so I wasn't going to shell out $100 for a game that looked crappy. So that's why that's in my number 2 spot. Before I reveal my number 1 game for this week, I want to mention one game that I left out. This came in a 4th place, close 4th place. The reason I didn't choose it in my top 3 was because I find it just hard. I don't have a good time playing it because it's tough. That's Zen, Intergalactic Ninja. This came out late in the NES life, so the graphics are fantastic. Everything about this game's good. I just have a hard time. I can't seem to beat hardly any of the boards, and it's frustrating, so I didn't enjoy it that much. That's why it didn't make the top 3. But my number 1 pick for this week's Top 3 Tuesday comic book themed games is Spawn on the Super Nintendo. This game, probably many of you have never played, but the whole game is dark, just like the comic books. As I said, I'm not a comic book guy. I was way back in the day, but I actually had Spawn number 1 when it came out. I can remember that was right towards the end of when I stopped collecting comics, but it was anticipated to come out. It looked really good. When it came out, right away I got the number 1 comic. So I looked it up, and when it came out, it cost $1.95, which is crazy cheap for anything. I expected it to be worth a ton of money now. It's only worth 22 bucks. So I guess comic book collecting is not very lucrative. But anyhow, like I said, this whole game is dark, just like the comic. The story, you got a guy kidnapping 13 children. The characters, they're all dark. You know, Spawn, well, technically a good guy, is actually a bad guy. He's dark. The soundtrack, it's bassy, and there's parts where it sounds like there's an orchestra playing just for this game. It's great. One of the top soundtracks I can remember, and I'm not into soundtracks of games. The graphics, A+. The controls made me not like it so much at first. They were a little tough to get used to, but I did. Some of the bosses and parts in the game were just harder than they should be, I thought. But, you know, I powered through it. I still have not completed the game, but I'm having fun playing it. And just, I think for the way it looks and the soundtrack, you know, like I said, once you get used to it, the gameplay is good. So that's why it takes my number 1 spot on this week's top 3 list. So there's my top 3 for this week. I want to once again thank Michael B. the Game Genie for putting this whole Top 3 Tuesday thing on. I think it's great. I'm having a lot of fun making the videos. I'm having even more fun watching them. Looks like a lot of other people are too, and that's great. I want to thank everyone for watching my video as well. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. And until next time, keep it retro!